Hey guys, how's it going? Micah Hill here, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Keller Williams. Hey, I just wanted to go over a few things and let's just talk about if you are currently in a home and you want to go from that home to the next home, what does that look like? And what are the steps you need to do to make that happen? So, let's just say you need more bedrooms, you need a different school zone, you need to either downsize or upsize, you need a bigger yard, or gosh, you've gotten to the age where you can't maintain the big yard you have and you need to sell. So most of the questions that I get from people are, when do I put this house on the market? When's the right time? Do I do it before I find my house? Do I do it afterwards? Do I need to get pre-approved prior to looking at houses? Do I need to, how much house can I afford? All of these questions are kind of out there, right? Well, let's break them down real quick. So when do you need to put your house on the market? Well, first we need to get a competitive, let's just figure out what your house is worth, right? Let's do a breakdown. Let's figure out what price per square foot your neighborhood's selling for or your area is selling for. And then because there's a difference between like sentiment and what you think your house is worth or what Zillow says your house is worth and what it's actually worth. In that being, we have to make sure that it appraises from a bank's perspective because not everybody is going to be paying with cash, right? And so from there, we need to figure out what your net proceeds are. That is, your net proceeds are what you owe on your property, well, what you're getting for your property, minus what you owe, minus closing costs. Closing costs include title work, deed prep, real estate fees. Some repairs can be paid at closing, all those things. And then you would have your bottom dollar of what you're actually going to make. All right. And so from there, once we figure out what your net proceeds are, we're like, okay, now I have X amount of dollars for, let's say down payment and, closing costs for my next purchase. Well, then we need to get with a lender and say, all right, Mr. or Mrs. Lender, I have X amount of dollars. I can afford to pay X amount per month. What can I afford? And they'll give you probably a range. Hey, that's between X and X, right? And so from that point, we need to go to, all right, Micah, let's look at properties in this price point. I love preferred timeline to start looking at properties once we have all that information. If we start looking at properties before we have all that information, then we're either going to do one of two things. We're going to find a home that is outside of our budget. And to put it in an analogy, we're going to find a Mercedes Benz when we can only afford a Camry. And there's nothing wrong with the Camry, and you may prefer a Camry, but if we find one with all the amenities, all the upgrades that you are fall in love with, you may not find something in your budget that you actually fall in love with. So let's figure out our budget before we start looking. And then the next question is, okay, now we have our budget. Now we know what we're looking for. Oh my gosh, when do we list our house? Okay. We list our house once we find out our budget. Okay. Why do we do it then? Well, because if we do it afterwards, if we find our house and then we list, well then what happens if somebody comes in and makes an offer without a contingency? Well, if you're a seller and you have two options of one being a house with a contingency or an offer with a contingency and one being one without, you're more than likely going to take the one without the contingency because they're able to close quicker and there's no less risk as a seller. So why don't we go ahead and get your house active and then we're able to roll back around and find your house and then go from there. Oh my gosh, Micah, what happens if we get an offer on our house and we haven't found the right property? Well, we let the buyer know, hey, we're going to need a little extra time to find a property. Give us 45 days, right? That'll give us 15 days to find a property and then 30 days to close. But if we've already done all the paperwork up front from the lender's side, then a majority of closing stuff, if we've already been through underwriting and already get all this stuff done, you can close really quickly. Sometimes I've seen it with even in 2 weeks. And so that's why it's important to get all these ducks in a row. Hey, if you have any questions about this and when to jump in or just want to know what your property's worth, give me a shout. 205-861-7923.